In the first reading, we are warned about becoming self-sufficient, about basing our glory on our superiority, so we think, over others. We are reminded each one of us will respond for himself without reference to anyone else in the last resort. We are also taught the difference between, now the expression of St. Paul is being in the flesh and being in the spirit. In the flesh, of course, the Semitic way, it's very concrete, we would say humanly speaking, humanly thinking, humanly acting. Whereas the other is a different level. We are living a life of grace, and we should share, as St. Paul says, the mind of Christ, the vision of Christ, therefore. What a man sows, that he will also reap. For he who sows in the flesh, from the flesh also will reap what? Corruption. Our acts follow us. We priests know that no amount of counselling or even medication can take away the pain of a guilty conscience. Only one thing can: the healing blood of our Saviour. Anything else is but avoiding the issue. And that's what people do in what they call non-directive counselling. The person's always right. But pride is part of the human problem. Vainglory is one thing. It's a feeling that we're superior, we take pride in what we have, but spiritual pride on the level of the will and the mind is a participation directly in the original sin of Lucifer, and it's more serious. There are different degrees, therefore. Intellectual pride is one. Some years ago, there was a vogue which used to be referred to as the death of God, very popular in intellectual circles, linked with logical positivism, proposed by Professor A.J. Ayer, who actually had an experience on the operating table and started to die and go towards a strange tunnel and red light. And when he came to, he was suddenly more reticent about being so sure that there was nothing on the other side that could be talked about logically. Around about the same time, in Oxford, one bright spark wrote on the notice board of the college chapel, "God is dead," and added, signed, so-and-so. Some years later, his innings was up, and another, even brighter spark came along, and on the same college notice board wrote, "Professor so-and-so is dead," signed, God. Wisdom. If one listens to a lot of stuff on live radio, one will come across human glory writ large, all a huge wild goose chase. The very culture and life we are exposed to, young and old alike, the daily training ground for this thirst to impress and to grow in other people's eyes at all costs. It can be anything. The sports field to the university hall. So we're impressed by these idols. There is, however, another wisdom. One time there was a young student who called himself an atheist. Now, by the way, an atheist is in greater error than an agnostic. You know why, don't you? An agnostic has the humility to admit he doesn't know. That's what it means. Agnosko, I do not know. An atheist knows, but there is no God. Theos, there is no God. He's affirming a truth. So this atheist was disillusioned with life as he knew it, but he tried then to find some solace, of all places, in an interior life, in faith. But as much as he tried to believe, he just couldn't. On his own, his search proved futile. So, now listen, at least he did have the sincerity to make a move. He started to travel, to search, and to seek advice from, now actually he was heading in the right direction. So obviously he was at least sincere. And that, by the way, is the difference between a genuine agnostic and someone who can't be bothered and really is avoiding the issue because he can't face himself, his conscience. So he went to discover if he could find some light from a renowned monk. This monk, as it turns out, was, notice, in a former, not too distant life, a postgraduate in astrophysics in Harvard. He also studied biomedical engineering at the MIT, from which he also received Doctor of Philosophy degree. He worked as a researcher in the cardiovascular laboratory and taught at Harvard University. He was also a scientific researcher at NASA. And how did he find the time to undertake studies of theology, learning a master's degree? Don't know. So, his list of accomplishments was long. But he had decided to leave it all and to seek wisdom in prayer and the quiet, hidden life of the monastic life, leaving the world behind. So he went to a monastery, living as a priest and confessor with a Bible, prayer beads, and a small crucifix as his only possessions. So, this student arrived, looking for an answer. Asked him candidly for no less than scientific proof of God's existence. The monk smiled and offered, as a joke, a short mathematical demonstration. For they say, in maths, we can glimpse the mind of God. But alas, the young man was studying philosophy, and the complex equations did not enlighten him at all. So the monk apologized and explained that if God's existence could be proved by an equation, all educated people would believe. And he offered to send him to a true saint, an elderly monk with little education. I prefer an educated person, said the student. I'm afraid of saints. There's no need to be afraid. Faith is a matter of the heart. Give the saint a try. So, with that, the student followed by foot the path to the elder, through unspoiled nature and almost wilderness. There he arrived one late afternoon to find quite a number of people waiting outside, a white, tiny one-room chapel with the old monk inside talking to pilgrims. He took his place among the crowd, the very back of the queue, waiting. A while later, the old man came out, and to everybody's surprise, gestured toward the young student, calling him out of the crowd. "I'll tell you a secret," the man said quietly in his ear. "Some people are atheists, but you are an atheist with the name of an angel. That's the first time I've heard of that." The young man's name was that of Raphael, which is a very uncommon name in the area. The student was astonished. He'd never met him before, had no clue of his name. And how did he pick him up from the crowd of 30 pilgrims? And what did he mean? Finding his breath, he asked, "Father, can I speak to you for a minute?" "What's to say? Have you not found what you were looking for?" At that question, said the student afterwards, I felt I could finally breathe easily. My heart was suddenly filled with faith. My doubts were gone, without any argument, without any discussion, only with the gentle hint from the saint. This week, the blood of St. Januarius Gennaro, they call him, liquefied again in Italy. It did last year as well, but not the previous year, which was a bad sign for the area and for the church. And when that happens, the whole of the Cathedral of Naples goes wild with applause and their mode of praise. Simple people. When still a very anti-Catholic evangelical, something similar happened to me which knocked me, not intellectually, but in this way. I went to the Eastern Orthodox Church in Cardiff, the Greek church, whose priest later on taught me to read Greek. And at the age of 13, coming straight from a very strong biblical background, having never experienced anything of this sort before, this came to me out of nowhere. This is God, not man. What you've had hitherto is man, as it were, creating God. Here, God is reigning over you, and you have nothing to do. You have nothing to add to it. You stand still. Somehow I sensed in that huge mystery of incense and otherness, there's something historic far bigger than anything we can imagine here, coming from the ancient centuries, coming from the power of God himself in the upper room. But there was a problem. This is too cultural. It cannot be universal. And sometime later, I went to a high mass in the local Catholic church and had the same experience with this difference. There were hundreds of people there in the suburb of Cardiff. It was packed, and they were from all over the world, and I could see there was here what cannot be in a heavily cultural situation. The only church that can have any pretense to being Catholic is the church that calls itself Catholic. It was not any intellectual vision, it was just an intuition. This somehow has to be it. I just finished with this. Why did that work? It worked because liturgy works when it's done properly. We don't need a whole load of arguments. Give them the experience and give a space, and God will do the rest. And that's why the Catholic Church right now is failing dismally. It's trying to be, as it were, in charge, and it doesn't have to be. We become bad Protestants. All we have to do is do well what's written and say only what we're supposed to, and the Lord